Hey there, 10th Standard Rockstars. Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm honestly so pumped for this one because today we are going to dive straight into Chapter 6 from your science textbook and build a complete intuitive mastery of control and coordination together. We're going to break down every single concept, every complex system, and every fascinating biological mechanism so clearly that you won't just be memorizing facts for an exam, you're genuinely going to understand how life works.
Think about it for a second. We look at a tiny seed slowly pushing through the dirt, and we look at a cat suddenly sprinting away from a mouse, and we say, yep, both are alive, right? Both are moving. But how are these incredibly different actions actually controlled? How does a tiny motionless plant know to push upwards, and how does a cat know it's time to run for its life? So here's our game plan for today. First up, movement and life. Then, the nervous system. After that, the human brain. Then we'll switch gears to coordination in plants, move on to hormones in animals, and finally wrap it all up with a quick check your understanding.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Movement and Life, unraveling the mystery of why organisms move.
Okay, let's start at square one. When we see something moving, our brain instantly goes, aha, it's alive. But, not all movement is exactly the same. On one hand, you've got movement caused by growth. Picture a seed germinating, right? Over a few days, it physically pushes the soil out of the way. If it suddenly stopped growing, that movement would just stop. But on the flip side, you have movement as a response to the environment. A cat sprinting, kids swinging on a playground just having a blast, or even buffaloes chewing cud to digest their tough food better. None of that is growth. It's a response. When you accidentally touch a hot pan, you instantly yank your hand back to protect yourself, right? So while plants move super slowly by growing, we animals move rapidly to react to our surroundings. And the big takeaway here is that all of this movement, fast or slow, has to be carefully controlled and coordinated by some highly specialized tissues in our bodies.
Moving right along to Section 2, the nervous system, electrical responses in animals. So to get that lightning-fast, ultra-precise control, animal bodies use this incredible high-speed electrical network. I mean, think about it. When you touch something hot, how does your body even know? Well, information from the outside world is picked up by the specialized tips of certain nerve cells, which we call receptors. You've got gustatory receptors on your tongue for taste and olfactory receptors up in your nose for smell. And when they pick up that info, it triggers a literal chemical reaction right at the tip of the nerve cell, which is called the dendrite. Let's kind of whiteboard this out in our heads so you can really picture it. The signal kicks off at that dendrite tip, where a chemical reaction sparks a fast-moving electrical impulse. That impulse races from the dendrite into the main cell body and then shoots all the way down this long tail, the axon, right to the very end. But here's the crazy part. Nerves aren't actually physically wired together. There's this microscopic gap between them called a synapse. So when the electrical impulse hits the end of the axon, it forces the cell to drop some chemicals into that gap. Those chemicals drift across the synapse and boom, they spark a brand new electrical impulse in the dendrite of the next neuron. It's literally a relay race happening inside you, zipping information around at lightning speed. But wait, what about a real split-second emergency, like catching a literal flame? You absolutely do not have the time to sit there and consciously think, wow, that's hot. I'm feeling pain. I should probably move my arm. By the time your brain figures that out, you're severely burnt. So your body uses this absolute cheat code called a reflex arc. Instead of routing the danger signal all the way up to your brain first, the input nerve that detects the heat connects directly to the output nerve that controls your arm muscles right inside your spinal cord. It forms a lightning-fast loop, yanking your hand away instantly before you even consciously realize you're in pain. How cool is that? Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the human brain, the main coordinating center of the body. Now, reflex arcs are great, but they aren't enough for, actually surviving and thriving as a complex human. We aren't just biological robots reacting to heat. We think, we talk, we read, we study for exams. Together, your brain and your spinal cord make up your central nervous system, or CNS. They constantly pull in data from all over your body and make sense of it. And to handle that massive, mind-boggling amount of data, the brain is split into 3 main, highly specialized regions: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Let's look at who does what. Check out this brilliant division of labor here. Your forebrain, that's the heavy lifter for thinking. It has dedicated zones for hearing, smell, and sight, and it literally cross-references all that new input with your old memories so you can make conscious choices. It's even the part that tells you you're full after a big meal. Basically, it controls voluntary actions, things you actively choose to do, like clapping or writing. But hold on, what about keeping your hand perfectly steady while you write, or keeping your balance while riding a bike in a straight line? You're not consciously calculating every single muscle twitch, right? That background magic is handled by a part of your hindbrain called the cerebellum. It is entirely responsible for the pinpoint precision of your voluntary movements and keeping your body balanced and upright.
Of course, because these neural tissues are ridiculously delicate and absolutely vital for everything we do, nature built an incredible fortress to keep them safe. Your brain doesn't just rattle around loose in your head. It's locked safely inside a hard, bony box, your skull. And inside that box, it's basically floating inside a fluid-filled balloon. That fluid acts as a customized shock absorber in case you bump your head. And your spinal cord? If you reach back and run your hand down the middle of your back, you'll feel those hard bumps. That's your vertebral column, or backbone, acting as this tough, flexible suit of armor for the delicate bundle of nerves hidden inside.
All right, plot twist time. Section 4, Coordination in Plants. How plants coordinate without brains or muscles. Okay, so plants. They do not have a nervous system, zero muscles, no brain. Yet, creeping vines perfectly wrap around fences and roots always know exactly where the water is. How on earth do they respond to their environment so well without a single nerve cell? Well, the secret is growth. Plants rely on highly controlled directional movements called tropic movements. They literally use cues from the environment to dictate which way their parts should grow. If a shoot bends towards sunlight, that's phototropism. Roots growing downward because of gravity, geotropism. Roots sniffing out moisture in the dirt, hydrotropism. And during reproduction, when pollen tubes grow straight toward ovules because of chemical signals, we call that chemotropism. Basically, plants steer themselves through the world by totally altering how they grow.
But wait, how does a plant actually tell its own cells to grow in a certain direction? Instead of fast electrical zaps, plants use a diverse toolkit of chemicals called hormones. They synthesize these chemicals in one spot and just let them naturally diffuse to wherever they're needed. Take the hormone auxin, for example. When sunlight hits one side of a plant, auxin, which is made at the shoot tip, diffuses over to the shady side. That sudden buildup of auxin forces the cells on the shady side to grow longer, which physically bends the plant towards the sun. Amazing, right? Then you have gibberellins, which help stems grow, and cytokinins, which push rapid cell division in fruits and seeds. But plants also need to know when to stop growing. That's where abscisic acid comes in. It acts like the brakes, inhibiting growth and causing things like old leaves to wilt and fall. It is flawless, steady coordination, running entirely on chemistry.
And that leads us to Section 5, Hormones in Animals. Chemical coordination in the animal kingdom. Turns out, this chemical strategy isn't just a plant thing. Animals use hormones too, especially when localized electrical signals from nerves just aren't wide-reaching enough to get the job done. Picture a squirrel suddenly coming face-to-face with a scary predator. Yikes, right? Its body has to instantly, completely prepare to either fight or run for its life. If it only used nerve impulses, the alert would be limited to specific tissues. But a chemical signal, that can saturate the entire body. So its endocrine system kicks in. The adrenal glands dump a hormone called adrenaline straight into the bloodstream. And this triggers an absolute domino effect. The heart rate spikes to pump more oxygen. Blood is instantly diverted away from the skin and digestive system and pushed straight into the skeletal muscles for maximum speed. The diaphragm contracts and breathing rate skyrockets. All of these massive body-wide changes, triggered by just one chemical, perfectly prime that animal to survive the danger. Let's wrap things up with Section 6, Check Your Understanding, Testing Your New Conceptual Mastery. All right, we have covered some seriously incredible ground today. Let's lock in this new mastery with a couple of actual textbook questions. First up, how do we know that we have eaten enough? Think back to our breakdown of the major brain regions. Which specific part of the brain is responsible for processing that distinct "I'm full" sensation? If you said the forebrain, you absolutely nailed it. It's definitely not a rapid reflex arc in the spinal cord. There is a highly specific, dedicated sensory area located right up in your forebrain. It essentially reads chemical and stretch signals from your stomach, interprets them as feeling full, and allows you to consciously decide to put the fork down. Okay, next question. How does chemical coordination occur in plants? If they completely lack a nervous system to send quick electrical messages, how does the tip of a shoot tell the rest of the stem that it's time to bend towards the sun?
Brilliantly, they rely entirely on hormones. Stimulated cells release chemical compounds, like auxin, which are synthesized in one spot and just naturally diffuse outward to target cells. Sure, it's a bit slower than the electrical nerves we animals have, but it provides a steady, persistent flow of information that perfectly coordinates their growth. It just goes to show, you absolutely do not need a brain to have flawless coordination.
And finally, I want you to think really deeply about this textbook question. What would happen to your body's signals if there was a spinal cord injury? Based on everything we just explored, reflex arcs looping right there in the spinal cord, and huge bundles of nerves traveling up and down to the brain, how exactly would an injury there disrupt all that magnificent control and coordination? I'm going to leave you to ponder the mechanics of that one. Thank you so much for joining me to master Chapter 6 today, Rockstars. Keep observing the brilliant biology happening inside you and all around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.